ayahuasca. Closed my eyes, it felt more real than me opening my eyes. It was like a civilization in space. I was scared. On ayahuasca, you don't have words waiting to change who they are, and we follow them without thinking. Hello lovelies, hello everybody. I'm recording ayahuasca experience, taking part in a diet for about 2 weeks because you have to prepare your body for the ceremonies. The diet was just ridiculously hard for me. April 28th for 4 days. Leader who taught us so much. It was such a good group that I did it with. I was in South Africa, I was in Cape Town, so I was really enjoying my time for that whole 2 weeks prior to the medicine. And as anybody that knows about ayahuasca, when you're about to experience ayahuasca, you're supposed to make it like your week before a bit difficult, so like you can be prepared for the intensity that ayahuasca brings. So when I went to the 4-day retreat, I was a bit worried. I was like, I've seen all these things, all these videos of people experiencing blah blah blah, but I didn't have a hard week, so I was really worried that my weekend was just going to be like a disaster. But I really loved the group. Everybody was just so... A lot of them have already done ayahuasca as well. I was one of the new ones, and like 2 other people. I'm gonna go skip to the first night. Stopped eating at 2 p.m. and did the ceremony at 7. So the ceremony starts, the leader, who I'm gonna call a shaman because it just makes it easier for me to refer to him as a shaman, started singing these beautiful songs after taking the first cup, which was gross. It was so gross. I have to say, it wasn't the most pleasant drink on this planet. I still have the sense now, and it's like, it was just strong and thick. First cup, which was a low dose. He said it was a low dose. We lay down for a long time. So some people with ayahuasca ceremonies, they do sit up. They do recommend some people to sit up, but the shaman that I had suggested that we slept on our backs. So we were all like that for a while. Like half an hour in is when I started to see things. Honestly, what I was expecting from ayahuasca is that my whole life was gonna fall apart. Like as soon as I took it, like I was expecting my whole life to just fall apart, like for me to see demons and stuff. Because prior to the experience, I was having dreams, and these dreams were not fun. Like I was literally fighting my mom in my dreams. Like it was ridiculous. And I was also seeing like really heavy spirits in an old home and stuff like that. This is all in the dreams prior, so this wasn't even ayahuasca itself. So I was really expecting some trauma some trauma to be healed from a traumatic experience with ayahuasca. But no, my first night I was laying there and I was just waiting, and eventually I just started seeing trains. Like a bunch of trains just started coming in, but as they were coming in, I would see like visuals, and I felt like I was in like space, but I wasn't just in any space. It was like a civilization in space. And like, I don't want to say it's the clearest vision ever. It's a lot of geometry that you see, but when you put the geometry together, like you start to see visions. So majority of the experience that people usually have with ayahuasca is pretty much geometry, but the geometry becomes so small that you don't necessarily just see geometry, you see a bigger picture of a thing or whatever. You can't really put it into words. That's why it took me so long to even tell you guys about the experience, because it takes a while for you to even really understand what was trying to come out. And then I start to see a group of guys. Like I start to see a group of guys who are like talking, and they were just so fun. They were just so fun, and I was just joking with them, and it was almost like I was in that world. And with ayahuasca, you can't just open your eyes and like be back in reality, but you're not supposed to open your eyes, otherwise you'll miss everything that's going on, right? So a lot of people are like told not to open their eyes, but I had to open my eyes. Just like I opened my eyes accidentally at one point during the conversations that I was having with these guys who were young. They seemed like they were from the east, so like Arabs. Like I opened my eyes and I was like, oh, I'm still on earth. I'm still here. It felt more real. The experience felt more real for me. So when I closed my eyes, it felt more real than me opening my eyes. Like when I opened my eyes, I was like, oh my gosh, why am I here? I was like, why am I still on earth? So I closed my eyes back again. I was like, not today. But it was just, there was so much joy. And like when I was having these conversations with these men slash boys, I don't really know what the age, everybody was just young. It felt like I was a part of them, and that I was their like one of their best friends, and like we were just talking about things, we were joking. It was literally a comedy show. I was in a comedy show on ayahuasca. Like it was so funny. Everything that they were saying was hilarious, and then they would make jokes about people on earth. And then near the end of that experience, because that experience was honestly a joyful experience for me, since ayahuasca is not supposed to just stay in the body, you're supposed to purge in some way. You either vomit, you either take it out from the other side, or you laugh or you cry. I didn't do any of that, apart from laughing. I was laughing, and it was just like everybody around me was purging, and I was just in the corner like trying to hide my laugh. I was just like, why is this so funny? Everything was so funny. Everything was so funny. And then after that whole funny situation with these guys, and we were literally like, it felt like I was on a tour with these, but I felt like I was also a man in that time of my experience. Like I didn't feel like a woman. I was just kind of joking, just like boys do, men do. And then near the end of that time, I start to see visions of my grandma, and basically a lot of serious stuff ended up happening near the end of the journey. So basically a lot of that time of my first experience was basically just me laughing about everything that you can imagine. Everything was just so funny. By funny, my eyes weren't open. Everything was just visuals. And ayahuasca is 6 hours. Near the end of the experience, while I was laying there, I started to see my family lineage. On ayahuasca, you don't have words. There's no words. It's just feelings. Like you don't have words. There's no, like, it was so, like, I actually got annoyed midway through the experience, because I was like, why can't you guys just use words? Like, just use words, because I want to take this away and remember it. And like, you just know what the other person's saying. It's like a blank stare is not just a blank stare. You could be having a full-on conversation with somebody with just a blank stare. So when I saw my grandma, she showed me a mountain, and there was it was females from my ancestry all coming down from the mountain, and I was right at the bottom of it, and I was the ending, the mouth of the mountain where the water should flow out, right? And I was right at the end about to be holding a lantern. Like me and my grandma are both holding a lantern, and we're both like she's kind of teaching me, and I'm receiving, and I can see my sister is kind of there as well, but I wasn't sure if she's holding a lantern or whatever. But yeah, it was just so mystical. And I remember just feeling like I have responsibility within this family lineage to make sure that the females in my family don't continuously fight, because that's a very common thing in my family. The females just always fight. The females don't have great relationship with men, and it was kind of like, if I wasn't going to go through this experience or do my healing, I was going to have the same sort of outcome. The female in my family are very, very strong, but they're so strong that they're not willing to accept help, and it comes off as this shut down person who doesn't necessarily, it's just this very stubborn person. And I saw that a lot in my mother, because my mother was very much like that. She was sick and she wanted nobody's help. Nobody. It was only me that was allowed to help her. So yeah, I was like, okay, this is getting scary. It did get a bit scary, but it was so wholesome. I felt like, yeah, I understand everything you're saying. And then there was 2 plants that I saw straight after, and it was 2 dead plants, and I was like, I wasn't sure what the 2 plants were for, but I felt sad, and I was like looking at these 2 dead plants, and I was like, I put effort into these 2 plants, like what happened to them? And then I looked behind me, so I looked, like as soon as I was looking way too much at these 2 plants, I got told to like kind of look behind me. I looked behind me, and there's these 2 massive trees, talking massive, taller than any tree you've ever seen on this planet, were behind me. And then it showed me my sisters. I've got 2 sisters. And I was like, now I understand what that is. These 2 dead plants, because me and my sisters had a separation. As in, like, there's just been a lot of like situations at home where we wasn't really allowed to be close to each other. So near the end, like as of last year, we basically had no contact. We're fine now. We're okay now. The story continues, you know? But I was focusing way too much on my 2 dead plants that I've tried to birth, tried to seed, tried to cultivate, tried to nurture, that I was just too focused on the past, and that I needed to stop looking at the past and start looking towards the future, which was the 2 massive big trees. And honestly, I started crying after that. I did cry. There was a lot of laughing, but near the end I started crying. I was like, oh my goodness, what a beautiful story. But you know, with ayahuasca, it shows you what has to be done. It doesn't do the work for you. So ayahuasca showed me a queue of females. Bear in mind, these females were young. It seemed like they were young. To be honest, everybody in ayahuasca was young. But like, everybody in this queue was young. All females ready, queuing up to have physical transformational changes, right? And ayahuasca was just telling me, like, be careful on what you put out there, and be careful on what you promote. Be careful on what messages you're sending to these females. Not that I send messages, but it was like, be aware that sometimes the things that we encourage in society, okay, for example, surgery, basically not necessarily being natural. Like, a natural female is not something we encourage, right? I'm not saying all the time, I'm just saying sometimes we don't encourage it, right? So I just saw a bunch of young females getting ready with like wigs, with like lines around their faces, and skin color, like augmentations and stuff like that. And I just wanted to cry, because ayahuasca was showing me, although a few have beauty in the sense that the Western world really likes, right? There's a bunch of females that don't fit into that category, waiting to change who they are just to fit into that category. We're not here to change. We are here to be who we are. Like I said many times, there's only one configuration of you. There's only one DNA version of you on this planet that will ever be. So why do we encourage change on the natural, you know? That was really deep for me, because it's not something I really paid attention to, but it clearly is a thing. Like, when we see media, when we see these models, when we see certain trends coming in, and we follow them without thinking, what examples are we setting for these children, for these young females who do not fit into that category? Bear in mind, it's one category in the Western world, or some area in the world, and then the whole world is trying to fit into that category. Imagine all these females getting ready to pay money, to hate themselves, to feel like they're less than, to even feel like, okay, they might not want to change whatever, but to even think that, oh, I'm not really that beautiful, I'm okay with it though. They shouldn't have to think that. They should be like, they should be able to be born and realize that they're literally the only one of them, and that I just think, yeah, I don't even know how to really put that into words, but that was one of my messages that I also saw. But yeah, ayahuasca ceremony 1 was an experience. It definitely was an experience, and it was really beautiful for me. It was a comedy show, ended with a beautiful, just beautiful. You could ask any question. I felt like I could ask any question, any question, and it would turn up. But the thing is, when you're on ayahuasca, unfortunately, you don't have your ego with you. So well, I didn't really necessarily have much of my ego with me, because you're asked to surrender so much of it before you even get to the visuals. So all the questions that the ego wants to know right now wasn't there when I was on ayahuasca. So it was almost like my knowing came back, and there wasn't much questions to ask apart from, you know, what's the situation with the family, how can I resolve this? And you don't ask anything else. You don't go asking ayahuasca, what's my gift, or whether, because you don't care about that. You really talk from your soul, because your soul already knows what your gift is. And the soul already knows what it truly needs and wants, and it doesn't even ask about this boyfriend, that man. Like, honestly, like, where's my soulmate is one of the questions that I wanted to ask, and because that's such an egoic thing, it wasn't there for me to even ask, because I wasn't thinking about those things, so I was way too higher up in the realms. So, would I recommend ayahuasca for anybody? The shaman that we did it with did say that not necessarily everybody needs to take it. There's so many other things, other plant medicines, and it has to call you, and it has to make sense. Like, if you go looking for ayahuasca and you're really trying to look for ayahuasca, then it's not your time. You know, I thought about it once. Next year I thought about it again, just searched it up, and there was one next to me. I was like, capiche. Never force anything. But apart from that, that was my first experience. I don't think there's anything else to add to that. Beautiful. Didn't purge apart from crying and laughing. Ayahuasca was a real experience. Like, it felt like the real life compared to when I opened my eyes. I felt like, where am I? Like, still here? Still dreaming in this realm? Like, why am I still on earth? And then of course the questioning at the end, where you're literally, I felt like I could ask any question, and all the questions that I needed to be asked were there. But yeah, I'll share my second experience on a next video, because this is gonna take too long. But it's been lovely sharing this with you. I can't wait to share the second part, because the second part for me was very, very, very different to the first experience. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.